Good morning, ladies. Welcome to our Wednesday morning weekly Tanya Shir. I want to just remind and announce that for the next few weeks, Eretz Hashem, we will not be having these Wednesday morning Tanya Shiurim. That's because next week, of course, is Rosh Hashanah. The week after that is Erev Yom Kippur. The week after that is Sukkot. The week after that is Simchas Torah. So for the most wonderful reasons I can think of, we're not going to have a Tanya Shir for the next 4 weeks. But, please God, after that, Eretz Hashem will go back to our regular programming as Hashem. Thank you all for being here. We're studying Perek Gimel of Tanya. If you have a lessons in Tanya, I'm on page 69, basically on the top of the page, where it says, Ubir ha'inyan. We're learning about the neshama. I believe it's true to say that there are few concepts in all of Chassidus Chabad, if any, that are as central and as crucial to everything that we learn about and daven about and farbring about and live with on a daily basis. Few concepts are as significant, if any, as this idea that every Yid has a neshama, and every one of us has a neshama. And as the Alter Rebbe explained in Perek Beis at great length, this neshama is a chelek elokam mimal mamash. Okay. Again, I don't want to go back there. The Alter Rebbe was much explained in Perek Beis about how every neshama is a chelek elokam mimal mamash. In that sense, every neshama starts off originally as a chelek elokam mimal mamash, and pretty much no matter what happens to the neshama after that, nothing of that changes. Al Kaponim in Perek Gimel, the Alter Rebbe goes into more of the makeup, more of the actual consistency. What is this neshama made out of? What does it consist of? So the first thing we learned, we started it last week, the first thing we learned is Alter Rebbe teaches us that the Nefesh Elokis has what he called Eser Bechinois, 10 levels, Connected Eser Spheres, all right, 10 levels, 10 powers, 10, many different terms for it, 10 faculties, etc. I'm just going to turn off my phone. For now, we'll call it, in the neshama, we'll call it Eser Spheres, that every neshama has, and that these Eser Spheres are divided into 2 Seichel Umidas. Seichel, 3 intellectual powers, and 7 emotional powers. And Alter Rebbe added that in the case of the Nefesh Elokis, the 3 intellectual powers are called imais, mothers, because the 7 emotional faculties are toldos. They are the children. They are the product. They are the derivatives of these 3 intellectual powers. This is what we learned. We're going to learn much more about this week, and then Eretz Hashem after Yom Tov continue. But this is the foundation. This is the tamsis. This is the essence of Perek Gimel. That the Nefesh Elokis that we already learned about is a chelek elokam mimal mamash. It has a consistency. It has there's the toichen to it. Its content consists of 3 intellectual powers and 7 emotional powers. Okay. Before we move on with the Bir Inyan, I want to repeat a great Hasidic vort that the Mashpiyim and the great Chassidim of yester generation would teach and would repeat, and sort of remind their students, all of us included, over and over again, that brings home this idea of this to the beginning of the discussion, the beginning of the significance of the discussion, that you have the intellectual faculties and the emotional faculties, and the emotional faculties are derived from the intellectual faculties. So the word that said goes like this, that there are 3 things that have an impact: mashke, alcohol, money, and chassidus. These 3 things change a person. They change a person in different ways, but the common denominator between all 3 of them is that they have a significant impact on the person. What is it? Alcohol, mashke, makes a person drunk. Money makes a person crazy. Chassidus makes a person spiritual, makes a person godly, makes a person refined, elevates a person. These 3 things have an impact, have an effect. No question about it. It's foolproof. Mashka makes a person drunk, money makes a person crazy, and Chassidus makes a person godly. Okay. Says the Vort, no, what if you see a person drinks mashka, consumes alcohol, and they're not drunk? They're level-headed, they're coherent, they're comprehensive, they seem fine. All their faculties are working just fine. There's only one explanation, Chassidim would say. The only explanation is they didn't drink enough. If you give them more mashka to drink, eventually they'll get drunk and they'll lose their minds. It's just a question of quantity. That's it. What if a person has money and they're not crazy? Happens also. Right? We all know people, Baruch Hashem, who have money, they're not crazy. Said the Chassidim, same answer. It's just they don't have enough. Give them more money, eventually they will lose their minds and go meshuggah. They wish to always hitting, right? Without getting into too many details. We all know this to be for a fact. There's a certain, almost everything that Hashem has created in the realm of physicality, a human being is limited. In terms of spirituality, a person is not limited. But in terms of physicality, well, the physical limitations. Even the mind, even the human element of the mind also has limitations. And if you give a person too much money, at a certain point they will lose it. Kacha Akadosh Baruch Hu bara et haolam. That's how Hashem created the world. And the third thing that Chassidus says is that learning of Chassidus has an impact on the person. It elevates them, it makes them refined, it makes them pure. And if a person learned Chassidus and they don't seem to have become refined, well, if they don't seem to have become refined, that could just be because we don't know the truth, right? But even a person themselves who says, well, I feel like I learned Chassidus and it doesn't elevate me properly. It doesn't, I don't feel the impact, right? I don't feel the impact. I don't feel like it's working on me. So Chassidim said that would be like saying I took a little bit of mashka and I don't feel drunk. I made, a certain amount of money and I didn't lose my mind. The only solution is the quality is not compromised. There's no problem with the mashka, there's no problem with the money, there's no problem with the Chassidus. You just need more. And if you'll have more and more and more, eventually, even if you have a stone heart, not you, Chas v'shalom, even a person who has a stone heart, and even a person has a stone brain, and even a person has difficulties, on all levels, it's all a question of perseverance. That's it. It's all a question of if you persevere long enough, and you see it through, eventually the Chassidus will it's a uis in there, which means it'll refine the person and elevate the person and make them sensitive to matters of godliness, etc., etc. It works. It's just a question of quantity. Okay. Now this, of course, it's a lesson for many things in life. Right? Now I'll tell you something else that I heard from my mashpiyim. My mashpiyim taught us nowadays everybody wants to lose weight, right? Everybody wants to lose weight. Rabbi Mendel Futterfass said very famously, he said, when we were in Russia, we worried all year about having an esrog for Sukkot and matzah for Pesach. Now, Baruch Hashem, we came to the United States of America, now we got no problem. Esrogim for Sukkot, matzahs for Pesach, right? You got no problem. You know that story of the guy who said, he said in Yiddish, he said, I have 3 sons. I have to say in Yiddish and translate. Einer verkauft matzahs, one sells matzah. Einer verkauft esrogim, one sells esrogim, and the dritte and the third, stam ganef, regular ganef. So now in the United States of America, we got nothing to worry about. Pesach and Sukkot roll around. We have matzahs, we have esrogim. We got nothing to worry about. So said Reb Mendel, so what do we worry about all year? Now that we came to America, what do we worry about? He said, Reb Mendel said 2 things. Losing weight and finding a parking spot. So a word from Reb Mendel. So nowadays everybody's trying to lose weight, but once upon a time, my grandmother talked to me about this, very openly. Once upon a time, people didn't have the volume of food that we have, definitely not available. So people were emaciated. People were very thin. In fact, this may seem difficult for you to believe, but when it came to shidduchim, if a person was too thin, it would be hard for them to find a shidduch, because people were concerned that they weren't healthy. It's almost humorous, but it's the way it was. If people were too thin, so geshat some shidduch. If a person was too thin, it means they were poor, they were impoverished, they didn't have food. It was a different time. So they, just like today, they have, retreats and rehab centers that people go to lose weight. In those days, they'd have retreats and centers that people would go to gain weight. Right? If you had an important meeting in a couple of weeks and you wanted to make an impression on people, you would go dacha. You would go to these places, and you would go, and it was a whole retreat that you would go to. You'd pay good money for it. And over there, they would feed you the types of food that would help the body, gain some weight. Again, it's, for today's younger generation, is a very difficult concept to relate to. But this is the mitzvahs. So the mashpiyim, our Chassidus teachers told us, gave us use it as a moshel, this idea. So the person who goes to this rehab center, to this place to go and gain weight. So apparently back in the day, if a person wanted to know if they were gaining weight, they would feel their flesh at the back of their neck. The back of their neck, after a couple of days, you'd be able to feel the difference if you were gaining weight. So the mashal they said is that this guy goes and he comes to one of these centers, goes to one of these places where they'd feed him achveis, schmaltz herring, and of course they wouldn't chas v'sholom dare let him exercise because then he burns calories, lie around in bed all day or sit and learn all day, but whatever, but definitely, don't overexert themselves. And they feed you 3 fatty meals, v'chulu. So the person comes to the rehab center and he checks himself in, achveis, for 2 weeks. He wants a shidduch, he wants whatever, he wants to gain weight. He wants to gain weight because in those, it shows you the shtus, this is an open bracket, shows you the shtus, the not just the materialism, not just the superficiality of the world's obsessions, but just push it, the folly of it, the fads, they come and go. There's this push it has no teichen, this push it doesn't mean anything. Push it doesn't mean anything. I was just recently reading one of the Rebbe's letters that he writes to somebody, about the contradictions between science and Torah. And the Rebbe says, I don't even know if I should, if this conversation is even oilal shulchan malachim, if it's even worthy of my time and attention. The Rebbe says, science changes their minds every 15 minutes. And that's science, which officially is based on wisdom and intellect. He said every morning, the wind blows in a different direction, they change their mind. We're intelligent people. You expect me to take this seriously? Torah's been saying the same thing for 3,500 years. Right? Wake up when we say the same thing for 3.5 minutes. It's important. It's important that people remember this. I'm not even talking about 100 years ago, by the way. We're talking about before the Second World War. Was it 80 years ago? People went to centers to gain weight. Anyways, I digress. The point is, the Mashpiyim said, this guy shows up at the center, and an hour into it, after his first meal, he's already feeling the back of his neck to see if he's gained weight. And this is what Moshel from Chassidim. And they said to him, sir, it doesn't work in an hour. It doesn't work from one meal. You got to sit here for a couple of weeks. You got to immerse yourself in the culture. You got to sit in it. Eventually, it has an impact, of course, but it's not to one breakfast and you're already feeling yourself to see if you gain weight. So Chassidim would fabreng about this, not because they cared about weight. They would fabreng about this because they saw it as a tremendous moshel for avodas Hashem. Since people learn one mimer, right? People go one shir, this they said before the days of the internet. Today, 140 characters, right? One Instagram message, one Twitter message, one word. Oh, ich will schon sein a chassid. I already want to be a holy roller. I want to fabreng. I want to inspire the whole world. Childish approach. Definitely not the Chassidus Chabad approach. Chabad nikru imas amokar abidas ki abidas told us Chabad intellect produces emotions. But you need one more ingredient, and you know what it is? Time. You got to marinate. You got to take the mimer, and you have to learn it again and again and again. You have to take the idea, and you have to daven with it over and over and over again. You have to take the niggin. Chassidim would sing a niggin. They would sing it again and again and again until it started to talk to them. Until the message that came through was a different message. They started to sense the depth of it. If to give maybe a little bit of a humorous moshel, right? It's like people who are married. after years and years and years of being married, hopefully, in healthy marriages, they start to hear and notice things in their spouse that they never noticed before. You're like, what are you talking about? You've been married to me for 25 years. You didn't know that? I had no idea. How did you miss that for 25 years? I've been telling it. I've been telling it to you, my dear husband, for 25 years, and you missed it? Yeah, for 25 years I missed it. You know what the truth is? The Pella is not that he missed it for 25 years. That's not the surprise. The surprise is that he finally got it after 25 years. That's the surprise. It takes time. Kol sheken v'kal v'chomer, when it comes to matters, issues of Chassidus, which is inherently godly. We're not even dealing with a tangible reality in the first place. Chassidim would say, as a lakus is a metzias, till we get it through, till it starts to sink through our system that godliness is a real reality. That it's a tangible, that it's not a physically tangible reality, but that it's an absolute reality. This takes avodah. This takes perseverance. It takes marinating, right? So when Chassidim would farbrengen, they would farbrengen for hours, on one word, on one idea. You heard something from a Rebbe, you heard a word from a Rebbe, you try to live with it your whole life. We're looking today, people look for inspiration every 15 minutes. They want a new word of inspiration. Inspire me, Rabbi. Rabbi, inspire me. What's inspire you? What? What are you going to do with the inspiration? They see it like you get a tank with gas. You fill the tank with gas, you make 3 akafas, you burn up the gas. Okay, now fill up the tank again with gas. So what? So you're running from one inspirational word to another. Inspirational vertlach are beautiful, don't get me wrong, I love them too. But they're skin deep. Skin deep is not Chassidus Chabad. I'll tell you one more word. If I shared this with you in the past, I'm sorry I'm repeating myself. But anyways, in the context of this, we can repeat the words. Rabbi Yoel Kahn, Zohar Malichtike Gan Eden, was the Rebbe's chief chayzer, was the Rebbe's chief, they called him the human tape recorder. He passed away a couple of years ago. After he passed, so many of his students were telling stories about conversations they had with him. He was an incredible mind and an incredible chassid, and he was just an incredible person in the understanding and teaching of Chassidus. In our generation, nobody comes close to him. So he said Rabbi Yoel was talking to one of his students. This is a student of his the student of his was a teacher of hundreds, thousands of yeshiva bachrim. So Rabbi Yoel was asking this mashpia, Rabbi Shalom Chartonov, his name is Ozan Gesund. He was asking Rabbi Shalom what he learns with the bachrim, what he teaches them in yeshiva. So Rabbi Shalom told Rabbi Yoel, he said, a couple of months I'd learn this, a couple of months I learned that, I go from this to that, I teach this and that. He teach different things. So Rabbi Yoel says to him, why do you jump around so much? This and that, this mimer, that mimer, the Rebbe Rashab, the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Rebbe, back and forth. He goes, but why do you jump around so much? So Rabbi Shalom tells him, because, he said, they spoke in Yiddish, of course. He says, Azoy is mer geschmack. He says it's more, you know what geschmack means. Geschmack is a beautiful Yiddish word. Geschmack is when something has an enjoyment, when you have passion and excitement in something, it's called geschmack. He says it's more geschmack. You learn a little bit over here, a little bit over there, like a smorgasbord. When you go to a smorgasbord, you eat one thing. It's like, I'm a smorgasbord. Take a little sushi, take a little fleisch, take a little, little chveis, das, and yes, a bissl mazoinus, a bissl oitz, a bissl adoma, a bissl shakel, a bissl agofen, not mash around. It's a good meal. You have one thing. So I heard the story from Rabbi Shalom Charton. Rabbi Shalom said, Rabbi Yoel kind of listened to him and shrugged a bit. He goes, Rabbi Yoel, I've said in Yiddish, says, Rabbi Yoel says, ich weiß nicht. Bei mir is mer geschmack, als ich lern ein Sach iber und iber. He said, by me, Rabbi Yoel said, by me, again, this is the greatest Chabad Chassidus teacher of the generation. I mean, the Rebbe's number, the Rebbe called him Doilo Mashke Mitoiros Rabbi. This is the number one person who is teaching the world the Rebbe's Torah. Rabbi Yoel said, by me, I have more geschmack when I take the same idea and I learn it over and over and over again. This, my dear friends, is Torah's Chassidus Chabad. That's how it works. And this, it has a real impact on the person. Because it sits in the system long enough, it starts to slowly but surely seep through until it penetrates. Where you see, we're all like, we're like that rock, all of us. Maybe I should speak for myself. We're all like that. I'm like that rock in the mashal of Rabbi Akiva. Nothing penetrates a rock very quickly. The water's got to drip for a long time. Drip, drip, drip. But if you're consistent and you keep it dripping, that's because people want to give up when they don't see immediate results. In everything in life, people want to give up when they don't see immediate results. When it comes to matters of spirituality, right? For sure, it's tempting to give up because, I don't feel different. I don't feel a change. Come on, Rabbi, I want to feel different. I learned that, I spent 30 minutes learning something. Now where's the change? Where's the impact? I want to be a different person. People get discouraged. But just like lahavdil, when it comes to business and anything in Olam Hazeh, the difference between the men and the boys, so to speak, the difference between those who are successful and those who don't, very often boils down to grit. Grit means those who can persevere even when it doesn't seem like it's working. When you have something that works, when you have something that believe it works, you stick with the plan, whether you're in the mood, whether you're not, whether you enjoy it, whether you don't, whether you feel like it's working or whether you don't, you do it again and again and again. When it comes to matters of spirituality, kol shekein v'kal v'chomer ben bnei shel kal v'chomer. Chassidus, my dear friends, every part of it works. Tanya works, the Rebbe Sichas works. Right? If mashke can make a person drunk and Chassidus can make a person crazy, Chassidus is no less powerful than that. By word of honor. Chassidus makes a person refined and elevated. Now, it doesn't make the Yetzer Hara go away like this. For this, it requires a lot of avodah and a lot of consistency and a lot of perseverance and a lot of doing it over and over and over again and never giving up and never getting tired and never making excuses. Oh, I'm not in the mood. Da, 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 da. You're not in the mood, you do it anyways. And that, my dear friends, is how it works. I'm saying this in context because the Alter Rebbe introduces us here to the concept that seichel produces midas, intellect produces emotions. So when the matters are of physical nature, of tangible nature, then the process perhaps is quicker, perhaps. But when you talk about inyonim ruchnim, inyonim elikim, godly stuff, the process is not quick. You have to learn the ideas and you have to sit with them and you have to let it percolate in your mind and you got to let it soak and marinate like a pickle until it has an impact. Okay. Biro Inyan, top of page 69, the lessons in Tanya says, Alter Rebbe, the explanation is like this. Hine haseichel shebenefesh hamaskelas. The intellect in the nefesh hamaskelas. By the way, the nefesh hamaskelas, this is not very well known. Nefesh hamaskelas is another name for the nefesh elikis. Did you know that? The nefesh elikis is another name for it, is nefesh hamaskelas. Nefesh hamaskelas means a soul that understands. Now, why would we call the nefesh elikis a nefesh hamaskelas? I don't know if we're going to get into that now, but suffice it to say, for now, let's just leave it at this. Suffice it to say that the nefesh elikis has a very intrinsic connection specifically with seichel, even though, of course, the nefesh elikis is not seichel. Nefesh elikis is beyond seichel. But its most comfortable arena, the most comfortable arena for the nefesh elikis to work with is the world of seichel. Very interesting thing. Even the nefesh elikis, again, is not, it's a lakus. And seichel is seichel. Seichel can be cold. Seichel can be dead. Seichel can be academic and detached. But nevertheless, of all the arenas that the nefesh elikis is given to operate in, the one that the nefesh elikis is, so to speak, most comfortable is seichel. And the simple reason for that, again, without getting too carried away for now, the simple reason for that is because seichel, intellect, is the most powerful tool that the Eibishter gave us, as much as humanly possible, for a person to seek out the truth. For a person to seek out, on a human level, of course, on a godly level, it goes much beyond seichel. But on a human level, the most powerful truth-seeking, the closest and most powerful truth-seeking arena is seichel, which is why Chassidus Chabad places so much emphasis on the understanding of this intellectually. This idea, I'm highlighting it because later when we get to Perek Daled, and definitely Perek Hey, the Alter Rebbe will make from this mamash an atomic bomb of an idea. The idea that the Eibishter gave a person a mind, a head, a brain. All right, some of us I should talk for myself. Even if it's not very powerful, even if it's very humble, but nevertheless it's there, which is an ability to rationalize, to understand conceptually truths to much of our limited ability. This is a very godly quality, and in Perek Hey, the Alter Rebbe will say it gives us an ability to connect to Hashem in a way that's greater than any other mitzvah. Okay, I'm saying this because the Nefesh Elokis is referred to here by the Alter Rebbe as the Nefesh HaMaskeles. So the Seichel and the Nefesh HaMaskeles, the Seichel and the Nefesh Elokis, these three powers. Shehu HaMaskel Kol Davar, which this Nefesh Elokis is the maskel, is the one that understands. Nikra B'Shem Chochma. It all begins with a power called Chochma. Chochma is an acronym for two words, Koyach Ma. The Koyach of Ma. We'll soon explain. That's in potential state. It's called Koyach Ma. When he extracts this from potential into actual. That he uses his mind, uses his seichel, to understand the concept in clarity and in depth. From something that he has understood through his chachma. Nikra bina. It's called bina. The hein and they, chachma bina, are referred to as ava aim, father and mother. Hamoilidos that give birth to ava, to emotions. What are the emotions? Avas Hashem, the love of Hashem. V'yirasa yopachtoi, and the fear and awe of Hashem. Let's read a little bit more. He gives an example. Because these intellectual powers of the neshama, when he thinks deeply and concentrates profoundly, in the greatness of the Eibishter. The Eibishter fills all worlds, and surrounds all worlds. And everything, the greatness of Hashem is such that everything in front of Hashem is like nothing. As he meditates and thinks on these ideas long enough, as he lets them soak in his mind for long enough, there will be give birth. His seichel will give birth and arouse within him midas yira. The first emotion he will feel is yira. Yira sarayimos, this awesome sense of the greatness of Hashem. First, the sense of awe and fear will be in his mind. Liyore, to fear, and to be ashamed. From Hashem's greatness, Hashem's greatness, which is infinite. Pachad Hashem b'liboy, and the fear of Hashem in his heart. And once he's had this sense of Yiras Hashem, then after that his heart will be inflamed ba'ava aza, with a strong sense of ava, with a strong sense of love. Karish be'esh, love like flames of fire. B'chasheko, with desire, v'chafetza, and a passion, utshuka, and a yearning, v'nefesh hakeka, and a longing soul, l'gdula Saint Sof Baruch Hu, for the greatness of Hashem, v'hi klois hanefesh. And this actually can bring a person to klois hanefesh. Klois hanefesh means where the yearning is so powerful that the neshama either wants to leave the body or actually leaves the body. Like it says in the pasuk, David HaMelech says in Tilim, my soul yearns and longs and expires. And it says, my soul yearns, thirsts for Hashem. So you see, says the Alter Rebbe, this is the pattern, this is the way it works, that from the seichel comes midas, from the intellect comes emotions. When a person uses their seichel to think, to meditate about Hashem, the greatness of Hashem, maybe we'll learn about explain a little bit more about this next time. What does it mean exactly? What exactly does he think about? The Alter Rebbe says three things: that Hashem is Mamala Kalalmin, Soivav Kalalmin, and Kula Kamei Kalach Hashem. Mamala Kalalmin means Hashem fills all worlds. Soivav Kalalmin means He surrounds all worlds. Kula Kamei Kalach Hashem means everything in relation, in the presence of Hashem, is like it's worthless, right? What exactly are these ideas? The Alter Rebbe doesn't get into it here because it's not. It's just Alter Rebbe is just using it as an example. It's an example for the idea that thinking about Hashem, thinking about godliness, will arouse within the person a sense, a midas, an emotional response. First, an intellectually emotional response, so to speak, right? Yiras Hashem b'moichai, b'moichai machshavtai. First, year the attribute of fear, then it becomes a real emotion of fear, and later it develops actually ava, develops even a feeling of love, where a person can get to a place, a yid can get to a place through his bonanus, through contemplation, through thinking, where they get to actually love, get the feeling of love and fear of Hashem. Okay, again, typically the way there's very little explanation here of the Alter Rebbe because the whole this comes to explain this. But this is the say, this is the system. Again, the point the Alter Rebbe wants here, inherently, the main point, is that the intellect produces the emotions. That's the main point here. In the process, the Alter Rebbe breaks it down. In the process, the Alter Rebbe breaks it down to two intellectual powers, Chochmah and Bina. At the end of Perek Gimel, the Alter Rebbe will also go back and explain the function of Das. There's a reason why the Alter Rebbe skips Das temporarily and only goes back to Das at the end, even though we're saying Seichel produces Midas, intellect produces emotions, and there's three intellectual attributes. But actually, you don't need all three to produce Midas. You can produce Midas just with two, just with Chochmah and Bina. If that's the case, what's the function of Das? Again, we'll learn about that at the end of the Perek. But for now, the Alter Rebbe explains that this dynamic of Chochmah and Bina would be sufficient to produce emotions. Specifically, the Alter Rebbe speaks about two emotions, the Midas of Ava and Yira, or Yira and Ava, first fear, and then love. Okay. A few more details, specifically with regard to Chochmah and Bina, again mentioned here by the Alter Rebbe very briefly. The Alter Rebbe says it starts with Chochmah, and then it develops into Bina. The words of the Alter Rebbe are that the Seichel shebenefesh hamaskeles, shu hamaskil kol davar, the Seichel is called Chochmah, and when he brings it out min hakoyach al hapoyel, from potential into actual, it's called Bina. Okay. Again, many details, many ways to explain this. I want to stick to really just to one point for now. The let's call it the mainstream way of explaining this. So the mainstream way of explaining this is the way my Tanya teachers taught it to me. Is the idea is that the Chochmah Bina dynamic works in the following way. Number one, the person is, let's say, sitting and studying something, right? You're studying a passage of Gemara, a passage of Chassidus, you're sitting and studying something. The idea that you're studying is lofty, it's difficult. What's relevant for now is that at first when the person is studying, there's the sense that they don't have mastery over it. They're confused. They have a question. It's plaguing them. It's intriguing them. Whatever the case may be, it's. They feel like they don't. They feel like they don't understand it. At this stage, what do? You do something called yagia, misyageya, which means you apply your mind and you try. It can feel like you're banging your head against a wall, sometimes for quite a while, if you even know where the wall is. Right? But the person can study the same idea perhaps for hours, right? Sit and study and read the words and think about what they mean and try to translate them and try to use examples and analogies to try to break it down. And they can feel like there's a blockage. It's a great word for this conversation. They can feel like there's a blockage. For some reason, I can translate the words, but I don't understand the idea. Okay. Then what happens, Chassidus says, is that at some point, the expression that's used is borok hamavrik, which means that at some point there's something that happens in the person's brain, which is experienced like a flash, right? The mashal they like to give lahavdil for this is like a light bulb, right? A light turns on, you get an idea, you get an insight, you have some sort of, let's call it a breakthrough, right? The blockage gives away, and there's some sort of breakthrough, and it's like there's a shift. There's an earthquake, if you will. It's like, and the wall, the wall that was holding back the water, the damn wall, breaks. And what begins in the person's mind is what's called the viyas hamoichin, this rush of understanding. And sooner or later, they have this new understanding of the idea, and pretty much everything makes sense, or many things make sense. They have a newfound understanding. Okay. Once they've understood it, later they can teach it to others, they can write it down, they can give shiurim, they can teach it to the world, or whoever's interested. Or if nobody's interested, then at least they can teach it to themselves. And the idea is resolved. So Chassidus says like this. Chassidus says there's actually two stages here. One is called Chochmah, the other is called Bina. Chochmah is the initial breakthrough, the initial trach, where the blockage breaks and the bolt of lightning comes through. That's called Chochmah. Later, when the idea is developed, it's called Bina. What's the difference? The difference is incredibly significant. A couple of very practical differences. L'mashal, number one, the flash, the bolt of lightning that rushes in, at that stage, the person doesn't yet know the answer to all of their questions. They haven't yet, because they haven't yet processed it. At this stage, they have just there's just an idea here, a general concept that a realization that they've made, that they can feel intuitively, intrinsically, they're gonna be able to use to answer all of their questions. But if you were to stop them right now and say, what's the answer to the question? They still have to figure it out. They know that they have the answer. They can feel that they have the answer, but they wouldn't be able to articulate it yet. In Chochmah, you have the idea b'chlolus in general, or in even better words, Chassidus says you have the whole idea in a nekuda, just one point. Chochmah is one idea. The details are going to come later. The details are going to be in Bina. One of the ways of explaining it, Chochmah is a nekuda, Bina is hispashtus. Bina is the expansion of that, right? That's why Chassidus says, the letter of the Aleph Beis that represents Chochmah is a Yud. The letter of the Aleph Beis that represents Bina is actually a Hey. Yud, the letter Yud and the letter Hey is Nekuda and Ispashtas, Chochmah and Bina. Nafkamina number one. Difference number one. Difference number two could be even more than that. Chassidus says, could be when the person just has the Nekuda, just has the Chochmah, could be at this point, they don't even know yet what is the Nakuda. They don't even know yet what that Nakuda is. They can feel in their mind, that aha moment. The aha. I have an answer. What is it? I don't know yet. Person who says that, well, they could be completely delusional, but they could be 100% in touch. I hear something, I sense something, I'm in touch with something, I got it. What is it? I don't know yet. I need to go for a walk, I'll come back, we'll start talking. They may not even have any oisius, any words for this at all. Just a sense in their brain, like a light, like a bolt of lightning, literally, that has shot through the sky. I got it. Later it starts to develop. A third example, Chassidus says, sometimes a painful example, sometimes you have the flash, sometimes you experience the Chachma, but for whatever reason the Chachma is too lofty, and a couple of minutes later, for whatever reason, you lose it. Chachma you could lose. Chachma you could lose. You could have the idea, you could look at the person and say once, oh my God, I got it. Nuzag, explain. You start talking and the idea disappears. In fact, in many cases, once the person gets the idea, they have to immediately stop talking in order to be able to hold on, to focus on the idea. If they continue talking, they'll lose it. Bina is not like that. Bina is not like that at all. Bina is broken down. Bina is well explained. Bina is well defined. Bina is not at risk of getting lost. Bina is not at risk of getting lost. The Alter Rebbe explains, the Bina comes from Chochmah. The Bina comes from the Chochmah. Bina is a breakdown. Bina is an explanation, an analysis. There's a good word. Bina is an analysis of of what we heard, of what was expressed in Chochmah. This that we've experienced in Chochmah, Bina is an explanation of that. So Bina is a breakdown of Chochmah. So Bina comes from Chochmah, granted. Where does Chochmah come from? Where does Chochmah come from? So Chassidus says something wild. Chassidus says like this. Chassidus says the difference in intelligence between people, why some people seem to be more intelligent, let's say academically, right? Let's say. Or some people less. Chassidus says this is only a difference in Giluyim. It's a superficial difference. Inherently, in the neshama, every Jew is as wise as Shlomo HaMelech, about whom the Torah says, Vayechka mikol adam. We don't feel it, but it's there. So this Chochmah comes from Koyach HaChochmah, or comes from, sometimes called Koyach HaMaskil, comes from the potential within the neshama, within the nefesh, to produce these ideas. The reason Chassidus says why you have to, the purpose of the yagiyah, the purpose of the toiling, is like banging, the moshel that Chassidus gives, like the banging together of two stones to produce a spark. Like when you're in the dark, you bang two stones together, right? It produces a spark. The yagiyah, when a person works hard and bangs their head, so to speak, against the wall, the banging produces the spark. Now a spark is just a spark. It'll disappear in a second. That's Chochmah. Chochmah is not going to last. Chochmah is not going to give you a fire. A spark is not going to give you light, and a spark is not going to give you warmth. It's just a spark. As soon as there's a spark, you have to have some kind of a twig or a reed to catch fire, to turn it into a fire. That's Bina. Chochmah or Bina, says the Alter Rebbe, is Avoim, is father and mother. The father gives the, like in the gestational process. From the father comes the nekuda, from the father comes, like we learned in Perek Beis, tipas moyach ha'av, and then it's given to the woman, Bina. Bina Yesera nitna bisha, who will take this nekuda, will take this biologically, yes, will take this nekuda from the av and develop it. 9 months later, out will come the toldos, out will come the children, the baby. Please God, who will be born with their own set of 248 limbs and 365 giddim, which in this case refers to the midas, the emotions that develop. This is the idea that Alter Rebbe has explained here with Chochmah Bina, glossing over some details, but this is the general idea. I want to conclude today with a vort. Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos that there's Shiva Dvorim b'Goylam v'Shiva b'Chacham. 7 qualities distinguish a Chacham and a Goylam. 7 qualities distinguish them, differentiate between them. And the Mishnah goes on to enumerate them, right? A Chacham is Eina Medaber Lefnei Mishagodol Mimenu. A Chacham doesn't speak in the presence of somebody who is greater than them, not b'Chachma, not in Chachma, not they don't speak in front of somebody who's wiser than them or older than them. Chacham doesn't interrupt. Chacham doesn't rush to answer, etc. And at the end, the Mishnah says, "V'chilufein b'Goylam," that the opposite is with a Goylam. A Goylam is an unsophisticated, undeveloped, person. So one of the 7 qualities of a Chacham, the Mishnah says, is that Al Masha Lo Shama Omer Lo Shamati. If somebody tells, the simple pshat is, if somebody tells him something, and he's never heard it before, so he'll say, Lo Shamati, I never heard it before. Chilufein b'golim, the opposite of a golim, the simple pshat is that if somebody tells him something that he's never heard before, he'll say, I did hear it, even though he didn't. This is the simple pshat of the Mishnah. So Chassidim said, if that's the case, it's not a chacham and a golim, it's a truthful person and a liar. What's it got to do with how smart you are? If you tell the truth, and when someone tells you something that you never heard before, you say, I never heard it before. And if you're a liar, then you say you did hear it before. So what's has to do with chacham and golim? So Chassidus gave a moyer dike pshas, be very carefully. They said you have to read the Mishnah. It doesn't say that when you didn't hear something, you say I didn't hear something. No. A chacham al ma sheloi shama omer lo shamati. Al ma sheloi shama. What's al ma sheloi shama? Al ma sheloi shama means you heard an idea 1,000,000 times. Then you hear it again, and this time when you hear it again, there's something undefinable about this idea that you're hearing now again, and somehow this time you hear something in it that you never heard before. Says the Mishnah, if you're a chacham, al ma sheloi shama, when there's one, you hear the same idea that you've heard 1,000 times before, but that's, something is different this time. You sing the same niggin you sang 1,000 times before. The same word b'fabrengen you said 1,000 times before, but somehow there's something you look for, something new that you never had before, and you say al ma sheloi shama, oimer lo shamati. So now that I hear something new, I never heard the whole thing before. The whole thing is new to me. That's a chacham. A chacham will hear the same idea, the same niggin, the same davening, the same hoid lashem kiru v'shmoi, and say, I hear something that I never heard, that I can sense something that I never sensed before, and I feel like I never davened before at all. I never sang this niggin before ever. The whole niggin is a new niggin. Nu and a goylam is punkt fakert. Chilufein b'goylam. If there's one part that's recognizable, he's not a liar, chas v'sholem. There's a part to it that he heard before. Al ma sheshoma, not a chilufein b'goylam is not al ma sheloi shoma omer shamati. Al ma sheshoma omer shamati. If there's one part of it that he heard before, he already writes it off. Yeah, ich heard the ganze Sach. I heard the whole thing already. No, chacham, no. The idea is nuanced, and with each nuance of it is an opportunity to reprocess the whole idea not as if, in a way, on a level that you never heard the whole thing, that you never heard it before. A goylam needs to be open to it. A chacham is open to it. A goylam is not. A goylam means the person is closed. They feel like they have it all. I'm saying this because the Alter Rebbe talks about chachma as koyach ma. What's koyach ma? In a simple sense, koyach ma means it's undefined, because in the world of chachma, the person doesn't have the definitions yet. They don't have the answers. They don't have the details. They don't have, like I said before, the flash of lightning can be lost, and the person himself can say, I felt like I had it, and then I lost it. But on a deeper level, the reason why it's called koyach ma is because there's something intrinsically undefined about it. The person has to be able to go back and hear the idea and think about the idea and feel the oyer. They have to be able to feel and hear the light in the idea. Sometimes two people can say exactly the same thing, superficially, explain the same idea, use even the same mashalim. On the surface, it could be mamash exactly the same. Two people can say basically the same thing. And when you hear one person say it, it's like the idea, for whatever reason, the idea feels dead. Not just dead emotionally. The idea feels dead. There's no depth, there's no... When the other person says it, even if they say basically generally the same thing, but when they say it, the idea is kuloi oyer. It's full of light. Because it's a chacham. A chacham is al ma sheloi shama. He's always looking, always successfully finding in everything to learn the same Vort Chassidus, to learn the same Perek Tanya, to say the same Vort in davening, to go to the same Elul and Rosh Hashanah that we went through so many times before, and to say, Chanaya Welt in Ganzen. I conclude with this. My father told me that Chassidim would say, if you learn a concept in Chassidus, and your mind tells the same idea that we're discussing now, your mind tells you, I learned this before, I understood it before. This is your intellectual reactions. Or Chassidim would say, if that's your reaction, you should know you didn't understand it. You didn't understand it until now, and you don't understand it now either. But if you learn a concept in Chassidus and you say, "Oh my God, I never heard this before." Oh. Now you may be onto something. May the Eibishter bless us all with a ksiva v'chasima toiva, lashana toiva, masuka b'toiva nira v'anigla lonu l'chol Yisrael. Yimale HaKadosh Baruch Hu kol mishalas levavchem l'toiva. May the Rebbeinu Shloim grant all of your requests and all of our requests. L'toiva v'livracha. Really, the truth is, really, all of Yidden, all of Klal Yisrael, we really only want one thing. That's the truth. The Rebbe taught us to accept nothing less. The Geula Amitis V'Ashleima, the true and complete Geula, with Mashiach Tzidkeinu B'mheira B'yameinu Mamash, take from Yad Mamash, like the Rebbe said. May it be now, speedily. We'll be reunited with our Rabbeim. We'll be reunited with our Rebbe. We'll be reunited with all the Chassidim. We'll be able to learn Tanya from the Alter Rebbe himself. We'll be able to sit at the Rebbe's feet by Fabrengen, as I had the schus as a Bar Mitzvah Bacher to sit by the Rebbe's feet. Tishrei, to hear the Rebbe speak, to hear the Rebbe bench every one of us with a good gebench diyar, to go together with the Rebbe and all of the Chassidim and all of Klal Yisrael to Eretz Yisrael, to Yerushalayim, Yer HaKodesh. The third Beis HaMikdash will be rebuilt. To have the Kohen Gadol, the Avodah. May we be zoichet to see this spirit. May we be zoichet to see this in our day, spiritually and physically. May it be now, mamash, an end to all the suffering. Genug, Rabbeinu Shalom, genug. Those are good for all Yidden. Bona chayim mezoina b'kolam revicha. I take this opportunity, since this is the last time we'll be studying Tanya together in this setting, before Rosh Hashanah, to thank you for being part of these shiurim. I mentioned this on Shabbos. I'm going to say it again. I'm continuously amazed at how much I am zoiche personally to learn from these shiurim. I can tell you in a moment of honesty, more than I ever dreamed possible. So thank you. And I say that with great humility and with great sincerity. Thank you for being here. And for those who watch the recordings, thank you for watching the recordings. For the feedback that I'm zoicha to have from the shiurim, I'm keenly aware there are a lot of rabbis who give a lot of shiurim, and many of them are very wise and very learned. And I'm zoicha to get, I'm zoicha to get a lot of positive feedback for the shiurim, Baruch Hashem. Eibishter soll euch benschen, miyodoi hamleya hapsucha k'doisha v'archava. Thank you, and Be'ezus Hashem, after Tishrei, we will continue. All the best.